Hey guys, it has been a while. I was sick and I'm still kind of am, so my voice is still not really well, but it should be well enough to do a video. So this build is a Gladiator with Earthquake focusing on Impale. I just wanted to see how Impale feels on skills that hit harder than steel skills, and I haven't really played with Earthquake since forever, so I'm kind of mixing many things into one build. Also, this is a max block Gladiator build, and having max or close to max block does feel pretty safe against syndicate members. And in this video you will see a bunch of clips me face tanking stuff that normally you don't face tank, and like walking onto barriers. I just wanted to see how tank it is. But normally I don't really like playing tanky builds because it's just boring, because they usually don't have a lot of damage. And in fact this build is not even the tankiest build you could do. I kind of wanted to balance damage and tankiness, so it's kind of a hybrid tanky DPS dealer, but it doesn't really shine in either of those aspects. And I think it's pretty well balanced. Mapping does feel pretty safe, but bossing is a bit slow, and farming Elder with this build is really not a good idea. I was unable to save the shape. I tried multiple times and just couldn't do it. There are just too many projectiles and the Shaper ends up dying, which means you have no chance of getting Watcher's Eye. Also, this build is not really that cheap, and if some new players would try to replicate this build, you would probably end up having way less damage and you probably wouldn't understand why. And the reason is because you have to stack all the small things together, get all the right items, get a bunch of Abyss Jewels with flat physical damage, the helmet enchantment, the right supports, the conditional damage modifiers. So I probably would not recommend this build for new players, but if you understand enough about the game, then this build is pretty chill. I would even say it's TV viable build. The highlight of this build was probably face tanking Minotaur, which I'm gonna show right now. This map has a crit multiplier and crit chance mod, attack speed mod, but nothing else too scary. Since I do have quite a lot of armor, well, not a lot, but over 8000, and my block chance goes up to 79%, I was able to face tank Minotaur until he crit and one-shot me. And that was without the Lion's Roar, which does give additional armor. And I do not have endurance charges. And while my damage wasn't that great, but I think it went down pretty fast. Here's another clip of me face tanking, I believe tier 9 Eradicator. Since this is Gladiator, I have equal chance to block attacks and spells. And I don't have any like recover life on block. And here's the thing, normally I only have 55% chance to block, but because of Gladiator, if I block, I gain more block. So the more I block, the more block I have, which only lasts for 4 seconds, but still it is enough to reach block cap. And if I do get hit, then I gain a lot of block chance immediately, and that is because of my jewels, which I'm gonna talk about later on. One last thing to mention, leveling felt kind of slow, but when I looked at my XP per hour, it was above 200 million, which is good for my pace, and I think this is deceiving because of how you play it. You hit and move, you hit and move. You don't wait for enemies to die before moving on, but you move only a bit. So it does kind of feel like you're moving slowly, but actually you're not progressing slowly. Kind of weird. Right, so let's talk about the items. And I guess skills and links at the same time. By the way, if you don't understand what I'm saying, on YouTube you can press C and it will enable auto subtitles. Which is also funny because YouTube doesn't understand what I'm saying as well. Anyway, items, starting from the weapon, and I chose to use Access. What I wanted on the weapon is obviously Impale chance and then as much average damage as possible. Not DPS, but average damage. And the weapon like this is not really expensive because people don't really value Impale, so I think I paid only like 40 hairs. Also for Earthquake you kind of don't want too much attack speed, because most damage comes from aftershock, and there is a delay between aftershocks. So you kind of want to have your attack time to be a bit higher than the aftershock delay. But don't stress too much if you can't balance your attack speed too much. In the weapon I have Tempest Shield, Curse on the Hit, and Vulnerability. You don't really need to level Tempest Shield because you're not really dealing damage with it, you're only using it for the 3% block chance. It only lasts for 12 seconds, but it does refresh its duration if you block. So once you start face tanking something, you're probably not gonna need to refresh it. Next, Helmet. helmet, I bought this specific helmet with Dread Banner enchantment because Dread Banner does give Impale chance and aura effect improves the Impale chance. And yes, Dread Banner is considered as an aura. Also, this helmet has a lot of intelligence which is only needed for curse on hit and Tempest shield, so it's not really mandatory to have a lot of intelligence and have high level Tempest shield and curse on hit. The other good thing about this helmet is that it does give +1 to socketed AoE gems, it does give some area of effect, and that does benefit Dread Banner. So in my helmet I have Dread Banner linked with Enhance, Empower level 3 and also Herald of Purity. The level of Dread Banner basically improves the Impale effectiveness, which basically means you do more damage with the Impale. And the quality improves aura effect, which means more chance to impale. So with my weapon and the Dread Banner reserving my mana, I have 50% chance to impale. And of course Herald of Purity does give flat physical damage to attacks, but the quality on Herald is really not needed, it only gives minimum movement speed. Next, the shield, and I got the shield myself. The main thing is aspect of the spider on the shield and global physical damage, and then it does have decent amount of life, some resistances. You can get aspect of the spider on some other item like rings or amulet or belt or boots, and then you could get a much better shield with something like a life gain on block, which would make you much more tankier. And in the shield I have cast when damage taken level 1 with Blood Rage level 7 and Immortal Core level 3. And I am using upgraded Soul of Arakalis Pantheon power, and when I trigger cast when damage taken, it stops the Blood Rage momentarily, which basically gives me more regen and more leech. Next, the body armor, and this is the first body armor that I 6-linked this league, which happened when I was sick and wasn't streaming, so viewer RNG confirmed. It just has decent amount of life and resistances, nothing special. You could just buy a blank 6-link and just craft some stuff yourself, which probably should be much cheaper than trying to 6-link an armor yourself. In the armor I have Earthquake set up, and I try to get quality on most of the supports, just increase my damage a bit more, and Earthquake is linked to Brutality, Maim, melee physical damage, less duration, and then chance to bleed for mapping, which I do swap for Bloodlust for bossing. But if you use Bloodlust, you cannot inflict bleed and benefit from Bloodlust, so for that I am using Val Ancestral War Chief inside my non-exceptional boots, linked with faster attacks, Culling Strike and chance to bleed. I don't normally swap gems and only swap it for bigger bosses like Shaper's Guardians. Gloves, 1 socket Tombfist, because 2 sockets are insanely expensive. You put Murderous Eye Abyssal Jewel inside it, so you do get Intimidate on enemies, which does give you more damage. And the links are Leaf Slam, Fortify and faster attacks. The belt, quite a lot of life and because of strength as well, some resistances, and then crafted generic increased damage mod. Amulet, actually Amulet is a talisman which I bought for very cheaply, just couple of years I think. The Corrupted Implicit does give attack damage, and it also has a lot of flat physical damage to attacks, some life and some resistances. But mainly you just want as much as flat damage as possible. Rings, crafted steel rings with a lot of flat physical damage to attacks, some life, some resistances if possible, crafted global physical and increase hair's damage mod, and then a big part of damage comes from Abyssal Jewels. The main thing is flat life, flat physical damage to attacks or flat physical damage to access, or maybe you are using maces, and then chance to block attack damage if you were damaged by a hit recently. And this can be pretty expensive. I think each of those jewels cost around 20 to 30 hairs. So all these jewels that I have is combined less than 1 Exalt. An Exalt is currently like 170 hairs. And in my case, once I take damage, I instantly gain 12% chance to block for 4 seconds. And once I block, I gain +1 to block for 4 seconds, which continues stacking. And that's how it's pretty easy to cap your block chance even without a Rumi's Concoction flask, which you could still use if you are brave enough to run with just 1 life flask. Oh, and as for my flask, I have 1 life flask for bleed removal, Lion's Roar, which does give a lot of damage, but it does knock enemies back, which is kind of annoying. Then Sulfur Flask to remove the curses and just to give generic damage, and Consecrated Ground, which does give regen, another flask to remove freeze, and then Quicksilver. Now for the passive skill tree, as a gladiator I first rushed to take Versatile Combatant and then Violent Retaliation. I think I may have said that you gain block chance for 4 seconds once you block, but it's actually for 10 seconds. And you also do get physical damage when you block. So the more you block in the 10 seconds, the more block chance you have and the more damage you ramp up. And lastly, from Uberlab I took Blood in the Eyes. The only other option was Outmatch and Outlast, but it's only usable and useful for while mapping, because you can't really get enough kills to generate frenzied charges against bosses, and you do have Blood Rage anyway. So the Blood in the Eyes does give you more damage against enemies that you maim, and does give you a chance to blind against bleeding enemies. And the rest of the passive skill tree, I did take the block nodes, Iron Reflex to convert my evasion into armor, Vitality Void to get more leech, and then just get life and a lot of jewel sockets, as much jewel sockets as I could. And then just travel left to Resolute Technique as soon as possible, and then a bit up towards the Templar to get more AoE and more life, block and all the other stuff. As always, in video description I will include the path of building import code. In conclusion, is Impale worth it? And I must say, I don't know. The Impale is not really calculated in path of building, so the damage is a bit higher than it shows. And in the notes I did some calculations to see how much average damage over time I would gain from the Impale, considering that I only have 50% chance to Impale and that my Impale does 12.1% damage rather than 10%. I end up having about 30% more damage from the Impale. This is not per hit, and that is once you start stacking Impales, but it is average. So the aftershock in path of building is only 89,000 without the Impale and without the stacking damage from the block. So if you count Impale, then you have about 115,000 aftershock damage. And I mentioned this just for reference if you're building your own earthquake build. And I can trigger 2 aftershocks per second. And that's gonna be all. My next build is going to be something with Void Flasher Quiver, but we'll see how that goes. So for now, thank you for watching and I'll see you soon.